name is Jacob. I am able.
ABLE will allow Jake to achieve his dreams. He'll be able to save for another service dog, which he really enjoys.
Oh, I get to keep it. My son is Jesse.
My son is Jerris.
I've never been able to save one penny for him in 26 years.
Living on their own, they are doing remarkably well. I think the boys are able to show others how able they are.
I am Marcia, and I am able. Being able to drive is a dream come true because I was told I wouldn't drive. And I can go anywhere and do anything, and it's freedom. It's like the best thing in the world to have a car.
My name is Nicolai, and I am able.
With Louis having Down syndrome and type 1 diabetes, the ABLE Act would allow Louis to have the resources to successfully live on his own, in his community, and with his peers. And that makes me very happy. And as a mother, it makes me hopeful for his future.
To have a job really makes me feel like I'm a working adult ready for the world. I plan to save for my own apartment, my own living space, and eventually maybe a car and kind of a new life. My name is Stephen, and I am able.
My name is Seamus Kelly, and my daughters are Molly and Maya. I think the best thing about ABLE will be that it will allow us as a family to save and plan for our daughters who have disabilities in the same way that we can save and plan for our boys who don't have any disabilities. We're the Kelly family, and we are ABLE.
Kind of gives you an idea of where the ABLE Act started, and that's what this slide talks about, and then how families are embracing an ABLE and how they're using it for themselves. Is everyone in here familiar with the ABLE Act? Okay, well, so ABLE, as it says here, it became federal law in December 2014. So basically what happened was a number of families and senators and nonprofits in DC got together and wanted to change how individuals that experience a disability could save. And through years of kind of pushing legislation, this was passed in December of 2014. And what happens is it becomes tax code because it's a financial savings product. And once the federal government makes it law, then the states can decide whether it makes sense for each state to implement it. And I come from Nebraska, and I work for a bank called First National Bank of Omaha. We're the largest privately held bank in the country. And my company and my team, we run the college savings program for Nebraska. And when this legislation got passed at the federal level, our bank and team decided we wanted to run the program on behalf of Nebraska. And these programs are all run by State Treasurer's Office because that's who manages state financial products. So we did the RFP for our state, and through a competitive process was able to win the bid. And we started managing the Nebraska program in June of 2016. We were one of the first programs in the country to launch. Ohio was up there with us, and Florida. And basically what we learned quickly is that the more states that we can work with, kind of economies of scale, make these programs more successful. So in about 2015, your state passed legislation, June 2015, and your state treasurer also did an RFP. That's what state treasurers have to do. And we went after the RFP along with some other companies to run your state's ABLE program. And we won that bid, and we launched your state's program in February of 2017. That's kind of how a group from Nebraska comes to Alabama to teach your residents about about your state's program. We work hand in hand with the state treasurer's office. I always tell everyone in Alabama, you have a fabulous state treasurer's office. I love working with them. Treasurer Boozer is a pretty amazing man, too. We're very lucky to have him. You know, his term is up at the end of the year, and we are all very sad. But you have a great product. Your state treasurer's team worked very hard to make sure you had a great product, and we work hard to implement it. So, back to the ABLE legislation. What did it do? The most important thing it did was allow individuals that experience disability that receive federal benefits to stay past resource limit. And the most important resource limit is that $2,000 that a lot of people are held to who receive SSI. Now, if you're not on SSI and you have Medicaid, you can also stay past those resource limits. So the idea is this plan now allows people to save. It supplements Medicaid, and Social Security does not supplant it. So they work hand in hand. And I kind of talked through this slide already, talking about how your state enacted its program. This kind of talks about my team at Nebraska and our bank. But the thing to note is, so my team with our Nebraska State Treasurer's Office always works on how do we make this plan better. But it always has to go in front of your state treasurer, and you actually have an ABLE board as well that meets quarterly. And we run everything by them, and then your state is actually signing off on how they want their plan to look. We just make the recommendations. So account ownership. The thing to note, when I go through a lot of this presentation, the federal laws were, I don't necessarily like the word strict, but very particular on how programs can be implemented. So any state ABLE program looks very similar. So most of the rules you see in this program are based on the federal level. There's nothing to do with Alabama law, it's just how the federal government said how these programs have to be run. So eligibility. First and foremost, an individual to open this account has to experience their disability prior to age 26. If they experience that disability prior to age 26 and they're already on SSI or SSDI, they've met Social Security's definition of disabled and they qualify for an ABLE account. But as you can imagine, we have a lot of young children and families who want to save for those children, so they haven't already gone through and applied for SSI or SSDI. So if they haven't already met that definition, they just need a certification from a physician indicating that individual has a marked or severe functional limitation that's expected to result in a continuous 12 months or possibly death, which is basically meeting Social Security's definition of disabled. So, long as a person experiences the disability prior to age 26 and meets one of those two bullets, they're eligible for an ABLE account. Does anybody have questions on how that works? Okay. So, how does account ownership work? When this legislation was passed, the idea was that the individuals that experience a disability have never really been allowed to save much money because then they would lose their benefits. So they said, let's have the individual that experiences the disability be the account owner. And if they're a minor, mom, dad, guardian owns it. It's minor owned, but mom, dad, guardian manages it on their behalf. If they are an adult that manages their own finances, it is their account that they manage. And if they are an adult with a disability that has a guardian, conservator, or power of attorney, that legal appointed person manages that on that adult's behalf. And I'll talk about that a little bit further. But the idea really was that the individual that needs the account owns the account. Make sure I said all that, yeah? So this is always a slide that's interesting. So when they were trying to figure out rules for this program and creating it, one of the laws or rules that they followed was first person special needs trust. So you'll see some rules in this that are similar to first person special needs trust. In this Medicaid, what we call clawback provision, the reimbursement provision is the same as what they say for first person special needs trust. Basically what it says is, if the account owner passes, technically Medicaid has rights for reimbursement for the benefits the individual received. However, first and foremost, if the individual should pass, funeral expenses, end-of-life expenses, and any outstanding medical expenses are paid first. Then, if there's anything left in the account, Medicaid could have right for reimbursement. But what I will say is the average account size in this country is about $4,000 or $5,000. So, as of now, nobody that has an account, if they should pass today, has enough money in it that after they pay funeral costs, medical costs, etc., they're going to have anything in it where Medicaid we have a right for reimbursement. It may be an issue we run into 10 or 15 years from now. But the nice thing is because there are so many expenses for it, we don't see this being a problem right away. It's just something we want people to know about. And we do have a kind of an ABLE group. It's, there's only 4 or 5 companies in the country that manage ABLE programs. And we get together on a weekly basis, do conference calls, we get together a couple times a year and meet face-to-face. And we all manage 529 plans as well, college savings plans. So we already have lobbyists built into our organization, and their goal, one of the big goals of this group, is to get rid of this Medicaid payback provision. You know, it's one of those things, I think we have enough proof to show that it's not going to be a deficit to the government if this happens, but as you know, legislation can be hard to pass, but it's something we are working on in hopes in a few years we can see this go away. So what can you use the money for? Obviously, once you have it in here, how do you pull it out? And the nice thing is, so I mentioned this kind of follows college savings plans, it's tax code. When the federal government decided to do this, they have to write it into the tax code. And so 529 is the tax code for college savings plans. So these are called 529A, 529 for ABLE. And in college savings, when you have a college savings account, it is very much black and white where you can take the money out for. Education costs, tuition, room, board, etc. But they understood that when they wrote this legislation, it couldn't be so black and white because every individual who's going to have an account is going to have very different expenses. So they categorized it into groups rather than making it specific expense items. So you can see you can use it for things like education, transportation, housing, personal support services, financial management, end-of-life expenses as we talked, health. But the last bullet point is the most important. Other expenses to enhance the account owner's quality of life. So what I always tell families and individuals, if the expense relates back to the disability, it's a qualified expense. And most expenses an individual incurs relates back to their disability, relates back to their life, and it's going to enhance their life. So there's a lot this can be used for. Some of my favorite examples that I think help demonstrate how flexible this account is, I work with a couple of women in Omaha that live on a campus that supports people with physical disabilities, and they have apartments. And one of them, due to cerebral palsy, well, they're both in wheelchairs due to cerebral palsy, and one of them wants to save for a recliner with a lift. The idea being it's hard for her to get out of some of her furniture she already has, so she said, can I save for that recliner? Absolutely. This is something you need, it makes your life better, it enhances your life, and it's tied to your disability. I've worked with a number of people who are saving for service dogs, as mentioned in the video, either a first service dog or a replacement service dog. Or horse therapy, I know is a big one, but it's also very expensive. So it can be used for things like that. Travel comes up a ton, as you can imagine. That's probably the biggest question I get. And what I always tell individuals is that a lot of times, a lot of the expenses incurred in travel relate back to these items. If someone has trouble communicating, they need someone to travel with them, or due to a physical disability, have trouble traveling on their own, so they need that personal support service to travel. Maybe they need special transportation, special hotel rooms, special admissions to parks or different destinations. All of those things relate back to the disability. So all of those things are qualified expenses. So I always say, there's a lot you can use this for. So we see families using it a lot, just because there's so many items that fall into these categories. Any questions about that? Okay. So impact to resource benefits. The nice thing is you have to put a lot of money into these accounts before you would lose like SSI. And the idea is the first $100,000 someone has in this does not impact SSI. Once someone has $101,000, their SSI is frozen or suspended. They don't lose it, they don't have to reapply. They just have to take the count down under the 101,000 or less, and then they get their SSI reinstated. The good news is, as I mentioned, with our average accounts being $4,000 to $5,000, this is like the goal we hope everybody has someday, but it'll be a long time before it's an issue. But I think it's good to know. There's a lot of money you can put into these. Let it grow if that's what you're doing, and it's not going to impact benefits. Income exclusions, excuse me. One thing I always tell families, when you put money into these accounts, it doesn't count as, I think I said that wrong. When you put money into these accounts as contributions, it doesn't count as income for the individual that experiences a disability. Withdrawals, as long as they're used for qualified expenses, do not count as income. So money in and out of these accounts does not affect an individual's income if they're held to an income resource limit. But it also doesn't allow them to shelter income. So it allows them to shelter money from a savings standpoint, build up that savings account, don't lose your benefits. But if you're held to like making $21,000 a year, you can't make $25,000 a year and put $4,000 in here and then make more basically than you're told you can. That's kind of what this slide says as well. Alabama Medicaid, before we launched this program in January of last year, my team in the state treasurer's office sat down with the Alabama Medicaid office. And it was a fabulous meeting. I mean, there must have been 25 people in there. And we went through this presentation and went through the program and made sure they not only understood the ABLE legislation, but that Alabama had an ABLE program. And they really did. I feel like they really got it. And we really haven't had any problems in the state of Alabama where someone has lost Medicaid because Medicaid saw an ABLE account and they misunderstood what it was. I feel like this team in the state is getting it. If you have to do Medicaid reporting, we always say this should be included on it. If you do Social Security reporting, this account should be included on it. Again, it can't hurt your benefits, but like other savings products, checking account, savings account, it is money that the individual has, and you're going to want Social Security or Medicaid just to see them have the account. And like in the state of Nebraska, I know every state's a little different. In our state, families have to do annual reporting on Medicaid. And I know it's a huge pain for them, and they have to send in a form to our back office that has to be notarized. So if you have to do that for any of your benefits, whether it's SSI, whether it's Medicaid, that's something we can do for you, just to sign off that, yes, we have the account, and here's the balance. And then that wages are subject to existing Medicaid income guidelines. Kind of going back to what I said. If you're allowed to make X, you can't make more and put it into here. You're still held to only making what Medicaid has said you can make. So account features. Basically, what can you do with this account? How does it work? So anyone can put money into the account, and that's really the benefit of it. I have a number of account holders that have part-time jobs, maybe full-time jobs, and they put their own money in. But as you can imagine, a lot of the money that comes into these accounts is from individual support network. Mom, dad, grandpa, grandmother, people around them. So anyone can put in, as it says, companies, trust, inheritance. If someone has a special needs trust, they can, as stated in the trust, move money to Enable. So it's like once a year money can come out of a special needs trust. Some of it could come into the Enable account. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the benefits of special needs trust and Enable working together. The example I love to give is the first account owner in the state of Alabama that we worked with was like in the Huntsville area, and she decided to start a GoFundMe page for a new service dog. Her service dog was aging out and she needed a new one. And obviously they're very expensive. So she started raising all this money on her GoFundMe page. Well, Medicaid got wind of it and said, you're over-resourced by having this money. We're going to have to pull Medicaid if you don't do something with it. And she wasn't quite ready to buy that service dog. So she got in touch with us. She had heard we were opening these accounts. And so we opened her Enable account, put that GoFundMe balance into her Enable account, and she was able to keep that Medicaid, and she actually just bought a service dog at the end of last year. So lots of ways this can be funded and used. The most it can go in is $15,000 per year, and that's all sources combined, so whoever's giving. But I always like to let people know we don't let anyone go over $15,000. So it's not like you put in 17 and you get penalized. Let's say for the year someone's put in $14,000, and then Uncle Bob sends in a check for $2,000. We would take $1,000 of that to hit the $15,000 contribution for the year. The other $1,000 would be sent back. So we don't let people go over the maximum. And how to contribute, again, it's just whatever works for the family, or the support network. Physical checks can be sent into us. AIP or systematic deposits, like $25 a month, $100 a month, or maybe it's that trust says every year I put in $1,000. Electronic funds transfers, the EFT, basically meaning I'm just going to set it up that as needed, I'm going to take X amount out of my brick and mortar bank that I already work with and just put so much money into my Enable account as I want to. And then payroll deduction. Our plan is similar to a bank account that you have at your brick and mortar bank, where we have an account number and a routing number, and on that payroll form you could add this as one of your savings accounts and say $50 a paycheck goes into this plan, whether that's the individual that owns it or their support network. So really lots of options, no one right way to do it. You just decide what works for you and the family and the support network.
You say for your payroll deduction, is that pre-tax?
No, it's always after tax. Sorry. We were always fighting for more pre-tax deductions, but not this one.
Joanna, can you, because yesterday you mentioned that you can put, it's by calendar year, so
Yeah,
you
thank
can.
you. That's a great point. Yeah, so the $15,000 is per calendar year. So you could put in $15,000 on December 31st and another $15,000 on January 2nd. So especially when I'm working with families where there's an inheritance and maybe it's not big enough to suffice a special needs trust, this is a great way to do it. You know, we're always hoping the government's going to give us more flexibility with this $15,000. We do run into families where that inheritance can be an issue. A lot of trusts need to be at least $50,000 to justify the cost and the setup fees. But you can't put that much in here at one time. So sometimes people fall into the middle, like you inherit $30,000. Well, you can only do it, you know, per year here. But the nice thing is, right on January 2nd, it doesn't matter if you put that last contribution in December 31st, you can add it again. So that makes it a little bit easier. And how to do those withdrawals. So again, we made it flexible depending on the individual circumstance. You can do check to the account owner, that's the account owner or the authorized individual. The idea being I'm going to pay myself back for something I already paid for, or I'm just going to put the money in my account in advance of me paying a bill. Or check to a third party. So that example I mentioned where our account holder is saving for a recliner. Maybe she wants a check to go to recliner ABC store. We could do that as well. EFT to the account owner's bank. That's probably the most common. You can link up a bank account to this, whether it's a rep payee account or just another account, and just say, as needed, just electronically move it. You go online and say, give me $200, give me $500, give me $50. The other thing, the systematic withdrawals, the most common use of that is in regards pretty much to special needs trusts. And I mentioned how special needs trusts and Enable tend to work together. For the families that have the resources to do a special needs trust, we always say absolutely. For large amounts of money, because you can only put $15,000 in here a year, a special needs trust can make a lot of sense. What a special needs trust can't pay for is housing and utilities, those kind of cost of living expenses. So I've run into a number of individuals that have trusts but are only living in a residence that can be afforded by that whatever SSI gives them. And my best example is we were in Berkeley for a special needs conference, because that's where Disabilities Rights Advocacy was born. And this huge group of people came together to discuss ABLE. And I met this gentleman that was quadriplegic, and he was telling me he was in Berkeley, which, as you can imagine, is a crazy expensive place to live. And he has a trust and lives off his trust. But his trust can't pay for his living, so he's living in this place that SSI pays for. And then you can imagine it's not very nice. And so the first thing he was talking to us about was, oh my gosh, can my trust fund ABLE? And it was like, absolutely. So let's say his trust gives him $1,000 a year, to do something with. He could put that into Enable, and then each month the Enable account then helps fund his rent. And he's now living in a little nicer place. It probably better meets his needs, but he is in a wheelchair, and he's still kind of making sure he doesn't lose his benefits of SSI and Medicaid. So systematic withdrawals, that's really where we see it. You have those monthly expenses. You need that money to come out on a regular basis, and you already have that balance to help pay for them. We also have a debit card check option. Makes sense for some of our account holders, doesn't make sense for all of them. The idea is if you want that transactional nature out of this account, you can get a debit card, and then checks are optional. So you don't have to do checks. The ladies that I mentioned that have cerebral palsy and live in Omaha, they do our public transportation. That's how they get around town, and for whatever reason, our public transportation only takes checks for bus tickets. So they opted for a checkbook. Yeah, ridiculous, right, in 2018. So they write, that's how they pay for their bus tickets, is they each have a little checkbook from this account and they buy their bus tickets. So something that can be usable, but not necessarily right for everybody. Tax advantages. So again, I mentioned this follows 529 college savings law. So when I go around and talk about college savings, this is the best benefit in the whole world, right? Save money, let it grow, don't touch it. When it has growth, like last year's market was on fire, you had 20% growth, you don't get a tax bill for that growth. And this account has that as well, which is really nice. You put the money in there, especially if you don't plan on touching it for 10, 15 plus years. It is nice to see that growth grow and not pay taxes. But as you can imagine, that's not the biggest benefit of these accounts. It's sheltering it from resource limit, which is the biggest benefit. This is just a nice added benefit that we let people know exists. Investment options. So, if you've decided, okay, I know I want to do this account, I kind of have an idea how I'm going to fund it, or where am I going to put the money once I open it? We have multiple options for you. Again, these are online investment accounts, and so you have multiple options depending on what makes sense for you. 3 target risk investment options. These are your long-term options. I mentioned you're saving for that service dog or that long-term expense, and I want a little growth out of my account. You could try one of these. They're low-cost Vanguard mutual funds, like what you find in a 401k. Probably even more conservative, though. We have a bank savings option, so that's just saying, you know, I put this money in there, I don't really care if it grows. The rate on it's 0.7. So, you know, it has a little bit of growth, nothing major. But I just want it to sit there. I want it to be my little nest egg, and I just want to be able to access it whenever. And then we have the checking option. So either some money, all the money, I want it to always have access to it because this is going to be more of a transactional account. So depending on how a family wants to use this, there are lots of options. I'll give you a little more detail about it. So when you go online or fill out the paper enrollment form, the idea is you have to figure out which ones make sense for you. You could do, like, and I work with families who say, you know, some of this money we're putting in here is for long term. We don't want to touch it. We're building that nest egg. I'm going to put it like in the moderate option at 60%. But I really want some of it just to kind of sit there, and if I need it, I'll grab it, and I'll put the 40% in bank savings option. So you can choose among the options as long as when you're done, they equal 100%. And then subsequent contributions. So the idea is you have this money that gets invested when you first open the account. If you don't tell us otherwise, however you set this up, that's how new money goes. So if you send us $100 and you said 60-40, we'd break it up 60-40. However, you may say, you know, this particular contribution, this is for something long-term, I just want it into that moderate option. Or I just want it to bank savings, or we're going to test out the checking account. You can always do that, you just have to tell us. You basically tell us, don't invest it into X, invest it in this other place. And then it says, investment changes permitted only twice per year. Again, it's kind of silly, it follows college savings law. And the idea is, so you have this lump sum balance in there, and let's say, you know, at the end of the year, you have a couple $1,000 in there. And like this year, the market is crazy, and so who knows where we're going to end up. We may end up on a positive note, but it's hard to tell right now. So you say, you know, I think I am going to take advantage of this crazy market, and I'm going to take some money out of bank savings and put it in the moderate option. That's taking a lump sum money and changing the investment, and that's what you can only do twice per year. But every other new contribution, you can always change. And I will say we don't see a lot of movement in accounts like this, in college savings or in ABLE. But it just lets people know. Basically, the idea is they didn't want it to be like a day trader account where people are shuffling the money around all the time, because that doesn't work for long-term investing. So those target options, the best information you can find on these, if you're interested, is our website. It's going to give you all the Vanguard mutual funds that are in each of these. It's going to give you the returns against benchmark, you know, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year returns. But this kind of gives you an easy breakdown. So if you say, what does it mean to be growth? Well, growth means I want growth. And the most potential for growth comes out of stocks. So it's mostly in domestic and international stocks and fixed incomes bonds, so a little bit in bonds. Moderate says, you know, I still want to be in the stock market, but the market makes me a little nervous, so I'm going to add a little more to bonds, a little less in stocks, and I'm going to throw some cash in that. And then conservative says, I only want a little bit of baby exposure to stocks, I want the rest in bonds and cash because they're not as volatile in nature. So for someone who wants to do long-term investing, one is not better than the other, it's just what is your risk tolerance and what do you want from this account? And you can decide what makes sense for you. And like I said, the web will give you way more detail than I could ever provide in a bunch of slides. So what are the account fees? What does it take to have an Enable account? So how we do a fee in this plan, it's a flat $45 fee. It's how every ABLE plan does it. We charge it quarterly because these are investment accounts. All investment accounts are managed quarterly, like you get your quarterly 401k statements. And so each quarter, you'll see $11.25 taken out to manage the program. I call it our keep the lights on fee, because that's basically what it's doing. And basically how it works, that's really the only fee you see come out of this program. We have total asset-based fees. Those are really like for the Vanguard funds. Last year, like I said, the market was on fire. A lot of people, if you were invested aggressively, you saw a really good return. Hopefully you all saw real good returns in your 401ks because you're all pretty young. But how that works is, let's say you saw a 20% return, you actually saw a 20.5% return. 0.5 is taken out on the back end as the fee, and you see the return after fees. So it's like net return. So it's never like a line item. Just like in your 401ks, that's how all mutual funds charge fees. Checking option fee, like I said, if you want the checking option and you want checks, you don't have to do checks. We charge $6 for a box of 50 checks. You have to start with at least $25 in that checking option. Again, a lot of our account holders don't seem to be writing a ton of checks. But if I meet someone that says, we're going to use more checks than that, then I always say, don't use our checking service. Go to one of those online services. For $6, you can get like hundreds of checks. So if you're a check person, you don't have to pay this. You can do an online service and get those other checks. Any other details about the checking option is on our website and our program disclosure. Just the in and outs of how the checking account works and all that stuff. And there's no other fees. We don't have fees to enroll, withdraw, change investment options, use our website. Basically, the fee that you see is at $11.25 per quarter. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. So account minimums. We kind of talked about it already. You basically have to start with $50. That helps cover that $45 fee. If you're going to do a monthly reoccurring contribution, it doesn't have to be at 50, it can be at 25. And you have to maintain that $50 minimum balance so you can pay the fee. And I always feel like the account balance limit's a little confusing. I always joke, I'm a licensed investment professional talking about an investment product. So my compliance officer tells me what I can say and can't say, and I have to have lots of full and fair disclosure, which tells you can put up to $400,000 in here. How that basically works is, for most people that use our plan, they're on SSI and Medicaid, so they're never going to have this much in here. The $100,000 is the SSI limit. Don't go over that, you don't want to lose your SSI. If for some reason we had someone using this program that maybe they're only on Medicaid or they don't receive government benefits, they're just doing this for other expenses that they incur by experiencing a disability, you could technically have up to $400,000 in this account. I wish this was going to be one of our problems, but I don't ever see it being an issue. But it's just good to know. Program disclosure document, that's our nitty-gritty back office form that can tell you anything and everything you'd ever want to know about our program. I always say if someone really has a really detailed question, that's where I go to find the answer. We also joke if you want to fall asleep at night, just read this. But if you have really detailed questions, that's where you find it. Enrolling is actually very easy. Once you're ready and it makes sense, basically it's just a few easy steps. As part of my job, myself and my team meet with families a lot, especially in Nebraska, and we'll sit down with them at a location and go through either the online enrollment or the paper enrollment form. They get very nervous, which I get, and then we'll get done and they'll say, oh, that's all I had to do. It was like 20 minutes, that was so easy. And it really is, because once you're ready, it is very easy. What we need from you, actually let me take a step back, online versus paper. So, we do have online enrollment that's, as you can imagine, even easier because it just pushes you to the next question. But online can be used by mom, dad, guardian that's saving for that minor, that small child, or if the individual is opening the account on their own behalf because they don't have a guardian, conservator, or power of attorney, they're the owner, they're going to manage it. Doesn't mean they don't get support from family and support network, it's just that they don't have an authorized individual that helps them do finances. So those individuals online. If an individual that experiences a disability has a guardian, a conservator, or a power of attorney, then they need to do a paper form. And that is because they need to mail in that legal document showing that they have legal authority to manage this other person's money. So you mail that in together, we read through the guardianship paperwork or the power of attorney paperwork, and then we process the account. So it just kind of depends on the situation, which one you do. As you can imagine, the paper form takes a little longer because it just takes a while to get through it all. But once you're ready, so the account owner, we need their social security number, date of birth, address. It's typical information for an investment account. If there's an authorized individual, same thing. Select your investment option, so where am I gonna put this money? How do I wanna fund it? And delivery options is because it's an investment account, I mentioned quarterly statements. Basically, when we communicate with you, do you want electronic email communication or do you want paper? You just tell us which is easier for you. You can also do on this, it's really helpful, we have interested party on the form. Sometimes that gets used when I work with an adult that's living in a residential facility, and maybe there's a person at the facility that helps manage everyone's money or keeps track of their money. So they just want a statement every quarter just to see where this person is with their account. That can be done, or maybe an individual is their own guardian, they manage their own finances, but mom, dad, whoever wants to make sure that everything's going well and that they're an interested party and get a copy of the statement as well. So it's very easy to do. And then basically you review it, make sure it's all right, hit submit, and you're done. So as I mentioned, it's pretty quick once you kind of have your ducks in your row and you know it makes sense for you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
All these slide papers that you're showing us, do you have like physical like copies, or do you have to go online? I'm old school. I want like a piece of paper so I can reread it.
Yeah, we can send it to you.
I'm going to send you copies of the PowerPoint.
Okay, that's the word.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So how to get started or how to learn more, enablealabama.com. Enable AL is our website. We have lots of information on there. We've done some tutorial videos to show people if you can enroll online, how does that process look. We have more videos of our families talking about the accounts, how they use the accounts. And you can always email us. My team answers that email, so enablealabama@fnni.com. If you have questions, people tend to reach out to us through that. And then on that little what I call the 4-pager with the cute little girl on the front, on the back is our website and our phone number. And then you can always find us on Facebook. As different legislation is passing, as things are happening, we're always trying to put them on Facebook because, as you can imagine, that's our fastest way to reach everybody. One thing that is happening in the state of Alabama, some of you may have heard of this. When I've met the groups this week, some have heard of it, some haven't, so I hate confusing people, but it's always good to know. In the state of Alabama, every state looks at guardianship differently. And in your state, guardianship doesn't mean conservatorship. And in the state of Nebraska, a full guardian is also a full conservator, meaning I'm a guardian and I can manage money. That's what a conservatorship means. In the state of Alabama, they didn't do that. They just said you're a guardian, you have to add on conservatorship. Well, most families have never added on conservatorship because most of their adults with disabilities didn't have a lot of money and it wasn't an issue. You had a Red Payee account and you managed that. Well, that became a problem for ABLE. And this is not just Alabama. Lots of states have this problem. And we can't open, as a program, an account for someone who doesn't have financial authority. So you can't be an authorized individual in this account if you don't have financial authority to manage someone's money. So we've spent the last year working with your state to fix that, because that's an issue. And they just, I don't know if they passed a bill, which I'll say made it law, that said if you are a guardian in the state of Alabama, you're now a conservator. So that just became effective like 3 weeks ago, which has been huge because it's prohibited a number of guardians to open accounts so far. So what that means is it's not an issue anymore, but that's the kind of stuff we share on Facebook. Your governor signed it, I think, last week. We're waiting for like an official signing. I think it's this week or early next week where you're going to start hearing about it. It's why you haven't heard about it a whole lot yet, because it's politics. You have to make a big splash with it. But the good news is if you have that guardianship and it doesn't say power of attorney or conservator, you can still open this account. Some of the families I run into had heard of this, so I'm just trying to make them aware that it's no longer an issue. So we're super excited this happened. Customer Service Center, they are fantastic. They manage calls for both our college savings program and ABLE. And what our center did was they took what was probably their most patient, nicest call center reps and put them on ABLE. And I've met with them, my team's met with them, I've educated them. And the nice thing is they get that these calls are different. You know, our college savings calls, people call in, how do I make a withdrawal? Or can I use my money for this? You know, average call stats, like 2 minutes a call, very basic stuff. ABLE, I think our average call stats is like 15, 20 minutes. I mean, they're long calls. And so we wanted good people on the phones because we need them to know that they're going to have to spend some time with individuals that are calling. They have a a lot of questions, they're confused, they don't understand the program. And the reason I talk about that is I just want people to know that if you call this number, and you can get a hold of them for a long time, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., they're going to take the time to answer your questions. If you already have an account, they only can talk to the account owner or the authorized individual. They cannot talk to someone about the account, because it's an investment account, it's a money account. Bob just can't call in and say, tell me the balance and ask questions. It has to be on behalf of the account. But if you're just calling because you want to know more, you have some questions about it, you need some answers, they'll talk to anybody, that's fine. And I think my last slide, yeah, so this is the slide I always say I have to show because I'm a licensed professional talking about a licensed product. Nobody reads it, but I have to prove that I showed it. So, okay, I'll leave it there because that's probably the information everybody needs the most. Questions?
I have a Facebook question.
Sure.
They said, could you review again the limit if there is no SSI, but they have to keep Medicaid? And then also what happens if the individual is able to start their own account, but then at some point has to get a power of attorney?
Perfect. As far as the limit goes, basically, if you're not on SSI, or you eventually get off SSI, you could technically have $400,000 in this account, and it's not an issue. So it's a very huge limit. And I just blanked on the other.
Oh, what happens if the person is capable of opening their account, but then at some point has to get a power of attorney?
Thank you. So, and that, has come up, and what we always say is that where that matters is that if that person it's decided they should have a power of attorney. If that power of attorney wants to be on the account legally and legally manage the account and help that person, then they just need to send us the power of attorney form. And then there's a page we have them fill out that they list their name, date of birth, social security number, address, and we get them on file. So they're listed so we know if they call the call center, we can say, yes, this is Bob, the power of attorney, and we can talk to Bob about the account.
Okay.
And the example I like to provide with that is, obviously we have a number of account holders that don't have a guardian, power of attorney, or conservator. They may need assistance with making certain, especially financial decisions, but not to the point of need a guardian. And so how I relate that to this program is, let's say I open a Roth IRA, and I know I want to do it, I kind of know how much money I want to put in, but I want to call my dad and say, Dad, wait, what investment options do I choose? And how do I manage my Roth IRA? Well, I can say, he can get online with me, we can go through my Roth IRA, he can talk to me all about it. But once I set it up and I fund it, he can't call in to my Roth IRA call center and say, how much money does Joanna have? What's she doing with that money? That's my account. And that's the same thing with ABLE. So we have individuals that mom, dad, support network, whoever it is helping them opening it, helping them manage it. They just can't call in on behalf and request transactions and the balance of the account, etc. Now that doesn't mean they both can't get on the website and review it and work through the website together. It's just legally with investment accounts, whoever is calling in, same thing with your bank account. If you can't answer those questions, you're not listed on the account, they can't give you the information. Any other questions?
Along the same lines, when that account's open, can that person list other people that are authorized?
The only person that can ever be, I'm trying to get the form right now. See, there's interested party can get statements, but I don't think they can call in on the behalf of the individual, the owner. But I'd have to double check that. I think because interested party in college savings is just receiving statements.
So it's not like a joint account?
No.
Okay.
But I could be slightly wrong. I'm just trying to think about it. But pretty much it's either legally you're able to, because that's how it is on the college savings plan. So like, let's say I have my college savings plan, and I have 2 kids, and the college savings plan's in my name. My husband can't call in and ask about the plan because he's a successor, but he's not legally listed. And it's kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a bunch.
But keep asking.
Actually, you answered most of them. I wrote them down and scratched them off as you answered.
Okay, good. That's a good sign.
Is there a max opening balance? How much can you start the account?
15,000. So you can do a check for 15,000 to start it. You just couldn't put any more money in until January 2nd of 2019.
How do you expect? How is it expected that you would ever run into this $400,000?
It will.
That's like 26, 27 years.
Yeah. So again, it follows college savings law.
The most you can have in a college savings program is $400,000. And as you can imagine, we have some college savings programs that are that big. And you can fund college savings plans differently. And so that's a great point. So for us as ABLE program managers, that $15,000 limit drives us crazy. Because what the government said was, oh, we're following tax law. Well, tax law states for this year that one person can give another person $15,000 a year. But if you're married filing jointly, you can give $30,000 to another person. And you can do 5-year forwarding. So you could give, what is it? I'm doing my math right now. Like $130,000 to another person at one time. You just can't do another $130,000 or any other money for 5 more years. So they're not really following gift tax law. They're vaguely following gift tax law. So
that's only one person.
Yeah,
you have 2 rich grandparents.
Right, they can't do anything. I know. Now,
That's where your trust comes into play.
It is, and that's where we say families that have more substantial amounts they need to give or want to give, or there's a death, that's where, yeah, special needs trust makes more sense.
We mean, this is not an issue with me, I'm just asking.
No, but it's a great question.
We don't have rich grandparents.
I have a question on the taxes. So the growth in the account is not.
It's not taxable and it's not income.
But it can push you over the $100,000 limit.
Yes, yes, and that's how it works in college savings too. So, yeah, if you have $90,000 of the balance and $12,000 is growth, that would push you over, and you just have to spend down that extra $2,000. You guys are thinking of something else, and I just lost it. Oh, maybe it'll come back to me. Oh, I know what it is. 529. So I was joking with the group yesterday that with the new tax law changes, the government decided to do lots of interesting things after they passed that tax law, but they really decided to throw a lot of stuff at ABLE and 529 plans, things we did not want. And once it becomes law, you have to figure out how to do it. And so as 529 ABLE plans right now, we're really scrambling to figure out how to implement some of these crazy things they came up with. One of them, which is a really good one, we're really excited about, is you can roll over a 529 college savings program into an ABLE plan. So for families who had been saving in a college savings program for an individual, and they've been determined, yeah, maybe that child will have some education expenses, but not as many as we originally thought they would, you can take that money and roll it to ABLE. But the way they wrote it, you can still only do $15,000 a year. But I will say that is not uncommon for us to manage that, because we have a lot of families who take state tax deductions with their rollovers from state plan to state plan. So let's say you have, like a $50,000, $60,000 college savings balance. It's easy enough for us to work with a family and take $15,000 every year until it's depleted. So we can easily do that. And I know it's not necessarily going to apply to all families, but for families who did have that plan, it is nice. You can now put it into ABLE. And I will tell you a backdoor trick, if I should put this out there, but if you have money for another child, so you have John and Susie, and John doesn't experience a disability, but Susie does. And John, they both have college savings, or Susie didn't do a college savings account for Susie because you didn't really know if she'd go to college. But John you thought, okay, he's going to go to college, I'm going to use the money for him. Well, you get to a point where you're like, I don't know if John's going to use all this money. I had someone actually tell me this yesterday. You can open a college savings account for Susie, because who's to say Susie's not going to go to college, right? You can't say that. So then you can take the money from John that's left over, and you can give it to Susie, and then you can take that money from Susie and you can put it into her ABLE program. Yeah. It's a bit of a backdoor contribution, but it's a nice way to take money from a sibling to another sibling and put it into a 529 plan. That maybe it's a qualified movement of money too. Because that's the thing you run into with college savings plans like IRAs and 401ks. You can only move money as the government allows as a qualified withdrawal, and transferring money in a 529 college savings plan from one person to another is a qualified movement of money. And that's to anybody. So you can move 529 college savings plans to anyone that's related to you by blood or marriage. So if cousin Billy has a leftover money and aunt and uncle want to give it to the child with disabilities, they can do that as well. So sometimes I work with a financial advisor. They get really good at getting creative if you have that situation, but there are some things we can do to help people with that. The other legislation that was passed, it's nice, we just don't think we're going to see a lot of use out of it, is called Able to Work. And the idea is, I need to say this. So the most you can put in is $15,000 a year. Well, if the individual that experiences a disability has a job, part-time, full-time, whatever it might be, they could put some extra money in from their job, it has to be basically from their paycheck, on top of the $15,000. Again, they can't make more. It doesn't shelter that income from any Medicaid limits. But if they wanted to be able to put $17,000 or $18,000 in, they could do that as long as they were employed and the money was coming from their employment. As I mentioned, we see very few people fund at the $15,000 level. So having that additional contributions is a problem we hope to have, but at this point it hasn't really been a problem that we have. But it's something to know, especially as we work with younger families, children, younger children with disabilities where their future could be so different and who knows what kind of money they're gonna make and how they're gonna fund this. So, something to think about. And as I mentioned, so we have the piece of legislation we're working on. The group that I mentioned that helps support ABLE also supports 529 plans. So we already have lovely lobbyists in DC that work on our behalf. But we've also partnered with National Down Syndrome Society, Autism Speaks, and National Disability Institute. Those are the three that are instrumental in getting this legislation passed in the first place. And we're working with them to continue the legislation. So we have a bill called ABLE 3.0, and it's something we'd like to see get passed. Fingers crossed, there'll be a lame duck session after midterm elections in November. They're saying December may have what's called a lame duck session. And bills like this that are feel-good bills, everyone wants to vote on them, they make everybody happy, something like this could get passed. Some say it's going to be next year. But some of the changes we're hoping is in changing the age from 26 to experience a disability to 46. That's something that's very, very important to us. That, getting rid of that Medicaid clawback provision is really important to us, and there's just a couple other things. So the nice thing about these programs is, like college savings, they kind of start off, kind of getting pushed through. They have good intentions, but they can be made better. So usually when you see changes happen to them, it's only to make them stronger, better, and more usable. So hopefully in the next year or two, we're going to continue to see changes. We saw a couple already at the end of the year with tax law. Hopefully we'll see a couple more.
I have two questions from Facebook.
Sure.
One was, can you roll a GI Bill into a 529A?
No. A GI Bill has basically used for education, and so I guess I don't think you can even roll into a 529, but I would say that would be that's where I go to that program disclosure document.
Mm-hmm.
But a tax accountant could tell you that. I would double check that a GI Bill couldn't be rolled into a 529 account. Okay. In my experience, I haven't seen that before, but that doesn't mean you can't. Okay. So that'd be the place to start. And an accountant would know that probably the best, the tax law of being able to do that.
Great. What if you move?
Oh, yeah, great question. So the nice thing about these programs is there are very few that have income restrictions. The state of Alabama does not have an income restriction. We love people to be in this plan from all over. Like the state of Georgia does not have an ABLE program. You are not going to see all states pass this legislation. Basically, you can live in any state and be in any state's plan, so all states don't need them. And they're very expensive to manage, and we can keep the costs down by working together. And so the nice thing is, you live in Georgia, or Alabama, where am I? Alabama today, sorry, and you move to Georgia, or you move to, I don't know, California. It doesn't matter. If you want to, some of those states have plans, and if you looked at that plan and said, I want to be in that plan, you can roll the money into that plan. But you can keep this plan, nothing changes. You still have the contribution limits, you still have the same setup. That's a great question. There's only a couple states that have residency requirements. And the one I bring up is Florida because it's close to you, so you might hear about it. When Florida started their plan, they said only Florida residents could be in their plan. I don't know why they did that. It's going to be really hard to make money. But it is how they set it up. But very, very few states say that. Most say you can be in anyone's plan. And there is another website that I talk about. So National Disability Institute, NDI, wanted to be an ABLE expert. So they created I think it's the ABLE NRC, ABLE National Resource Center. Yep, the ABLE NRC. If you Google ABLE NRC, you'll find it. They created ABLE resource pages, and there's a map on there. And it goes through every state that has a program. And I think there's about 25 states now that have programs. I don't think they're going to see it grow out much more than that. But it'll tell you each state's program. And as I mentioned, I say we're all pretty similar. But if you want to see that for yourself, that's a great place to look. Like, what does Kentucky's plan look like? I know they have one. Or Ohio's, or Nebraska's, or Oregon's, et cetera. You can just kind of see what are other states doing, what are their ABLE laws, et cetera. Any other questions? Do you have more, sir?
Just one. And I think I've seen it on the slide, but I don't recall it. This is not tax deductible. Contributions is not.
No, we would, it's kind of a state by state thing. We would like to see the contributions tax deductible eventually, because it helps, right? Every state, every deduction helps, but at this point, in the state of Alabama, they're not deductible right now.
Are there states that it is?
Yes. Not a lot, there's only a few, but there are a few. So when your state passes the ABLE legislation, it gets discussed, and kind of like when this bill got passed at the federal level, a bill that gets passed, and I don't know a lot, so bear with me, but I know a little. A bill has to have a score, and that is how much is this bill going to cost the country if we pass it? And we say with ABLE, they completely overinflated the bill. Like they said it's going to cost, like it could cost, and with like taxes, like how much less taxes is the country going to receive? $20 billion. Now, we wish that was a problem. We would all have so many more now, so that was our issue. So that's one of the things we're fighting, is to change the score of that bill, because it's ridiculous. But then that filters down to the state level, because the states are saying, well, what if every single person that experiences a disability in our state takes a state tax deduction? Oh my gosh, then we will be collecting such less taxes, and that's hard on our state. So a lot of states did not pass state tax deductions for their ABLE programs. But again, that was, I think, initially people were like, well, how much is this going to cost us at the state level? And I think as we continue to have time, and so I mentioned I meet with all these program managers across the country. This program is very slow to grow across the whole country. We just know it's new. People are taking the time to make sure they're comfortable with it. And I think as states see that, they're going to realize offering a state tax deduction is not going to hurt their bottom line. So I think we'll see that change over time. It's just taking some time.
And it's based off the state in which you live, not in which the state in which you contribute. Correct?
That's exactly right. Because when you take a tax deduction on these programs, it's like college savings. It's where you pay your taxes, because it's only at that state level. So yes, you have the state. So like, I mean, if you lived in Georgia, and Georgia offered a tax deduction, then that would be different. But when you live and pay taxes in Alabama, it's what their state tax deduction is.
But if someone else lived in another state and their state offered that deduction, they made a contribution to that, they could claim that.
Usually. It sometimes depends if you're in your state's program or not. There's a lot of caveats to it, but,
okay.
but yes, that does sometimes. And what I always say with everything that does with ABLE, call your legislatures and say, especially as disability advocates, why aren't you letting us have a tax deduction? Did you guys have a tax deduction on your college savings program? Yes. I'm pretty sure you do. Most states do.
Yeah, we spend ours. So.
Yeah, right. Well, that's good. That's really good. But most states do, unless you don't have state taxes, which I know you guys do. But that's the thing, you can call your state legislatures and say, hey, if we can take it from my college savings program, and I'm saving for Bobby in college saving, why can't I get it for Susie when I'm saving with ABLE? So that's always the best way to get some of those things changed. Other questions?
How old is this bill? And could we go back to wherever the state started, see how they performed?
So like as I said, Nebraska was one of the, Nebraska and Ohio and Florida were the first to launch, and we all launched in June of 2016. So it's new, it's really new. So the federal legislation passed in December of 2014, and as you can imagine, then we had to all wait for our states to pass legislation at the state level to decide if they want to. And a lot of states took a while to pass this legislation, not because it's bad, it's just, how do we do this? How do we create these programs? Who manages these programs? So it's been a very slow process, but that was the same thing with 529s. There were like 3 states that offered 529s in the beginning, and most of them started with prepaid plans, which don't exist anymore because you can't fund them. But, so really the oldest history you have is June of 2016, us in Ohio, again, Florida's their state residents only. And the performance that you can see, well, there really isn't a lot of performance you can see, I guess. I mean, you can see our individual investments and how they've done, but like a 401k, your 401k is going to be different than her 401k, different than his 401k, because how much money do you put in? What day do you put the money in? There's so many variables that everybody's personal return is so different. But what I would say is, as I mentioned, there's only 4 or 5 program managers doing this. And that is because it is so expensive to do that nobody else is going to get in this business. but everybody who does it is very good at it. And so all the programs are run very well. It's just, like I said, you can go to that website and kind of see our differences. There's a few tiny little differences, and sometimes the differences maybe make sense for people. But basically, and again, we have a lot of laws that regulate these plans, and so there's not much we do that make them different or make them better. They're good. At the end of the day, the best thing that anyone's going to get out of this is the only place you can put money and not have a resource limit. And that's really what's going to continue with these programs. Is we can make changes to change the age, and all the changes we want to make is we want to make them more available to more people and make fear factor go away, and that's like that Medicaid clawback provision. And some of the things we want to do to change them is just make them easier. But by the nature of them, they're safe. You can't really steal from anyone's 401k. You can't really steal from someone's college savings program. You can't really steal from an ABLE program. And because there's so many different levels of investing, as far as the risk goes, it's really up to you. How do you want it to perform? What do you want from it? Does that all make sense?
One last question.
Yes.
Max on, or penalties on a big withdrawal?
Nothing. And that's a good question. That's one thing I hadn't said yet. So the question I'll get a lot is, what can I not use this money for? And in talking to all our programs, the only things we've all come up with is don't use it for alcohol, tobacco, controlled substances, and nicotine. I can't really prove that those are qualified. Now, I mean, I know we could probably come back and say some of these relate to my disability, but at this point,
Definitely improves.
yeah, it definitely improves quality of life, especially for certain people. I mean, I would say there's definitely some good arguments there, but for those four things, it'd be probably, and what I always tell people, like with college savings plans, when you let me take 2 steps backwards. When you do a withdrawal from our program, whether it's a $10 withdrawal or a $10,000 withdrawal, whether you go online, call our call center, or fill out a form, we say, is this a qualified withdrawal? It is a self-regulated product. So that means you check a box and say, yep, it's a qualified withdrawal. We take your word for it. If it's not, we don't penalize you. We're not in the job of penalizing account holders. And no program manager is. So what we always tell families, so how college, and it's say like college savings. So in college savings, you say I'm taking out, $20,000 to pay tuition. You probably are. But keep that receipt. And how you get penalized in the college savings world is if you would get audited by the IRS for something else and they see you have a college savings program and they saw you took out $20,000 in August, they're going to say, show me the receipt to prove you use that for college. Well, in the ABLE space, most of our account holders aren't going to get audited because they really don't pay any taxes. So that's not really what they're held accountable to. What I always say is because you have to do reporting to either Social Security or Medicaid, you want to make sure that you're doing qualified withdrawals for the money because when you do your annual reporting to Social Security and they saw you bought, I don't know, a ton of alcohol with it, they may say, well, we don't view that as a qualified expense, and then they may view it as income. So you're more held accountable to them than not really to us.
Question was age limits.
Oh, that's another good one. Yeah, so as long as the individual experiences the disability prior to age 26, nothing else matters. So we have account holders that range in age from 1 to 82. So anybody can open an account. It just depends on meeting that age 26 requirement and meeting Social Security's definition of disabled, basically. Any other questions? Any other questions on there?
Good. That was the last one.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joanna.
Yeah.